This is the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and when it comes down to it, it's kind of all about the little things. Allow me to explain. What's up, internet? I'm Brian MacDuff, aka BMac, and welcome to another video. So yes, indeed, today we are going to be taking a look at this bad boy right here, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra smartphone, and what makes this new flagship Sammy smartphone worth checking out. First things first, I do need to give a quick little thank you and a shout out to Samsung for actually loaning out an S25 Ultra for me to be able to check out, try out, and use. So Samsung, thank you. Appreciate you. But with that having been said, let's just get right into it here, as we often do, starting things out with the design of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra and what this device is looking like on the outside. When you first look at the S25 Ultra, you're gonna notice some pretty obvious external changes. For one thing, the stronger grade 5 titanium sides now have actually been flattened to complement the completely flat front and back glass. But to maintain an ergonomic design that feels great when you're holding the S25 Ultra in your hand, Samsung also rounded out the corners of the device, making what I personally think is the best design we've seen in an Ultra S series Samsung smartphone to date. The S25 Ultra is actually also ever so slightly thinner and lighter than the S24 Ultra, and you're probably gonna notice these larger, beefier rings around the lenses on the back, but more on those in a few minutes. Speaking of the front and the back glass, that is gonna be Gorilla Glass Armor 2 here on the front. With that Gorilla Glass Armor 2 strengthening that front glass to protect it even further, but also doubling down and further enhancing the anti-reflective properties of the Gorilla Glass Armor. That's on top of the anti-reflective coating that Samsung is using here in that front display to really cut down on that glare no matter where you're using this device, here in the studio or even outside. The back glass on the S25 Ultra is gonna be Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which is just awesome to see here on this device, considering the fact that you're basically getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the Gorilla Glass Armor with its anti-reflective properties and strength on that front, with the Gorilla Glass Victus 2 and its incredible strength and shatter resistance here on the back. All of this packaged together with an IP68 dust and water resistance rating, giving you solid waterproof protection on par with what you would expect out of a modern day flagship smartphone. For biometrics, you do once again have an under display fingerprint reader, and this is going to be an ultrasonic fingerprint reader that works pretty much flawlessly in my experience. Which is important, by the way, because I was really hoping we were going to get class 3 biometrics for face unlock on the S25 Ultra, but no such luck. It still appears to be a 2D based face unlock, which is just not nearly as secure as I feel like it needs to be. So hopefully we see that in the future. But we of course cannot have an S25 Ultra review without dedicating some time to the included S Pen here, like you get with the S25 Ultra. It's still gonna be tucked away into the device itself on the bottom left-hand part of the device. But some bad news here for the S Pen. On the S25 Ultra, the S Pen's been pretty drastically downgraded. The S25 Ultra S Pen no longer supports Bluetooth and doesn't even have a capacitor built into it, which results in the immediate loss of the S Pen air gesture and remote shutter features. Personally, I don't get this. I don't know why you would still include the S Pen but water it down to this extent. I guess the obvious answer is budget cuts and budget restraints, but if you want to keep that Note legacy alive and well in the Ultra S line, this isn't exactly the best way to do it. In terms of color choices, you are getting a current total of 7 different color options to choose from with the S25 Ultra. Those colors being titanium black, titanium gray, titanium silver blue, and titanium white silver, with titanium jade green, titanium jet black, and titanium pink gold available as online Samsung exclusives. But an integral part of the S25 Ultra experience is, of course, the display. So what's this latest flagship Samsung smartphone looking like when you're looking at it? The display this year in the S25 Ultra is actually just a tad bit larger, measuring in at 6.9 inches, with it still being a 1:120 Hz dynamic AMOLED LTPO always-on display, and a Quad HD Plus 3120 by 1440 resolution, providing almost a 500 ppi pixel density rating, and an impressive 92.5% screen to body ratio. You do also get support for that HDR10 Plus content, but I really was holding out hope that we would see Dolby Vision supported this year. No such luck. I know Dolby Vision technically is considered a competing HDR spec on Samsung devices, but there's plenty of Dolby Vision content out there that I wish I was able to experience with Dolby Vision on this device, but for now you're gonna be limited to just HDR10+. And in terms of brightness, I have found the S25 Ultra to get plenty bright, even in the brightest and harshest of lighting situations, which probably in part has to do with its specs, but also again, that anti-reflectivity that we keep talking about. With a peak brightness rating of up to 2600 nits and a measured brightness rating of around 800 nits of typical brightness, with upwards of around 1400 nits when in high brightness mode. So at the end of the day, there's no denying that the S25 Ultra display is one of the nicest looking and highest performing displays available in a modern day flagship smartphone, and it undeniably adds to the already commendable S25 Ultra experience. But let's switch gears here a little bit and talk about the camera system of the S25 Ultra and how the photos and videos look that could be taken with it. The S25 Ultra houses a total of 5 different camera lenses, 4 on the back and 1 on the front. The rear-facing cameras consist of a 200 megapixel f1.7 wide-angle lens, a 10 megapixel f2.4 telephoto lens at a 3x optical zoom, a 50 megapixel f3.4 periscope telephoto lens at a 5x optical zoom, and a 50 megapixel f1.98 ultra-wide lens. And then you have your 12 megapixel f2.2 selfie camera, also with phase detection autofocus. For video, the S25 Ultra is capable of shooting up to 8K 30 frames per second, 4K 120 frames per second, or 1080p 240 frames per second slow motion, and in case those numbers sound familiar, that's probably because they should. They're almost identical to those of the S24 Ultra. So even though we have those bigger and beefier camera rings around those rear lenses here on the S25 Ultra, they're apparently just for show. However, I do think that the 50 megapixel change with a wider aperture is a better choice and benefits you with the S25 Ultra, especially when you're using that pixel binning, because arguably you could get some better low light performance here. But in practice, how did the camera system actually perform? Well, as you can see from the photos I took and snapped on the S25 Ultra, bottom line, photos look pretty darn great. I am seeing some slight improvements in the overall image composition and dynamic range, which means the processing and computational photography on the back end was probably refined a little bit for the S25 Ultra as well. The level of detail and sharpening is top notch, and the colors seem overall accurate with just a little bit of pop to make them stand out. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out how amazing the S25 Ultra Galaxy AI has been, because it's vast, it's helpful, and it really is impressive. I can make an entire video just talking about Galaxy AI, but as it specifically relates to photo editing, it's nothing short of amazing. Whether it's removing objects, moving objects, or even drawing in objects, it's borderline scary how well the Galaxy AI handles all of it, and it's a feature I actually find myself using to improve my photos. It's not 100% perfect, it doesn't always get it right on the first try, but when it does work, the results are just simply incredible. And the word that comes to mind when reviewing this camera system is consistency. You are consistently gonna get solid photos no matter what kind of shooting environment you're in, no matter which lens you choose to use. But as is usually the case, a huge component of what's making these photos and other features possible is of course the performance of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and how this baby is able to handle all of the processor-intensive tasks that I'm throwing its way. Housed within the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is the latest generation Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, a powerhouse of a chipset that you could expect to see in a lot of other flagship smartphones this year. And with it comes configuration options for 256 gigs, 512 gigs, or 1 terabyte of storage with 12 gigs of RAM across all of those storage options. There is a 1 terabyte option with 16 gigs of RAM available on the international market, and as is usually the case when this happens, I do wish we at least had access to that model so I could be able to talk about it, but that is going to be limited to the international market and it's not readily available here in the USA. But even then, I still do think 12 gigs of RAM is enough and solid enough for what I need to get out of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. It seems to suit it well. I do hope we get a slight bump in RAM to at least 16 gigs next year, but for now, I'm happy with the 12. Because when you take those 12 gigs of RAM and pair it with that Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, the performance power of the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is just beastly. Like the Ultra S series smartphones have been for several years now, whether I was gaming, photo or video editing, multitasking, you name it, I was more than satisfied with how snappy, fluid, and smooth my experience was, all without the device getting noticeably hot either, which actually says a lot about the overall performance and efficiency of how everything's working together. You're also getting support for Bluetooth 5.4, with support for the SBC, AAC, SSC, aptX, and LDAC audio codecs. Personally, I'm okay with this. I probably would use LDAC the most, followed by maybe SSC if I'm using Samsung wearables to listen to music. But one thing that is an omission here is aptX HD. I definitely thought we would have seen that this year in the S25 Ultra. It was actually even rumored to have that coming to this device, but no such luck. Good selection of audio codecs here, but I do wish it gets a little bit more expanded in the future. But the cherry on top of all this is, however, the guarantee from Samsung for at least 7 years of major Android OS updates and 7 years of security updates, which effectively keeps this device relevant until the year 2032. Which is wild to think about. Love to see that. That future-proofs you a little bit for getting this phone and allows you to invest in something that's gonna be relevant for several years to come. But with solid performance comes the demand for solid battery life. So what's the battery life like on the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and how long could you actually expect it to last for? The S25 Ultra houses a 5,000 milliampere hour battery, which, yes, is the same battery size we've had with the Ultra S series devices for several years now. But in terms of actual screen on time, I'm gonna say you could expect pretty comfortably at least 7 hours of screen on time on a full charge. You're also getting 45 watts of wired quick charging that allows the S25 Ultra to charge from 0 to 50% in just about 20 or 25 minutes, or from 0 to 100% in just about an hour. These are solid S25 Ultra charging numbers that are an improvement over prior generations, but there is still room for improvement here when you compare the charging times of other smartphones readily available on the market right now. Some of those things could charge up to 100% in only like 30 minutes total. So the bar is being pushed. You are also getting 15 watts of wireless charging, which could charge up the S25 Ultra from 0 to 50% in probably just over an hour, or from 0 to 100% in just about 2.5 hours. There are again already smartphones on the market that could charge wirelessly at a much higher wattage and at much faster speeds, some of which could wirelessly recharge from 0 to 50% in just 30 minutes. So once again, that bar has been raised. And then once again, you do still have support for 4.5 watts of reverse wireless charging. Not something I use all the time, but it's nice to have there in case you need it. There are other smartphones that are substantially higher than that as well, so that bar has been raised for reverse wireless charging as well. The Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra is a solid offering in the charging department, but it's by no means the leader anymore. But with all that having been said, here are my final thoughts on the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra and whether or not it's as big of enough of an upgrade as you may have been hoping for this year. So here's the thing. It seems like it's been a trend for Samsung over the last several years to incrementally update and upgrade different components of the Ultra S series line of devices. There isn't necessarily anything on the S25 Ultra itself that blows itself away from the S24 Ultra of last year, but at the same time, all those little incremental improvements and upgrades do add up when you take a look at the bigger picture. The S25 Ultra is an amazing smartphone with powerful performance, camera power, multitasking capabilities, and it's all packaged up into a beautiful flattened design that, like I said, is my favorite S-Series Ultra device to date. But with only incremental upgrades comes some pretty obvious room for improvement, especially in areas where other flagship models are already pushing ahead. And in some cases, pushing pretty far ahead. There's a lot to be happy with the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and it is the culmination of many years of releases and refinements coming together, but the bar has been set and there are still some things that need attention, and I'm very curious and excited to see where Samsung goes when heading in that direction. As always, for the latest deals, prices, promos, and information for the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, you can of course always head to my affiliate link, bmac.link/S25 Ultra, or of course, as always, there's gonna be clickable links in the video description box and in the comment section below, so be sure to check those out. I'm gonna go on a mission to figure out all the different ways you could still use the watered down S25 Ultra S Pen. I still love this thing, I'm gonna make it work, but I will see you guys in my next video.